When people think of innovation in cars, their minds often jump straight to Silicon Valley, shiny Tesla showrooms, or futuristic European designs. But what if I told you that something completely unexpected is rising out of Africa? Yes, Africa. The continent that the world often overlooks when it comes to high-tech breakthroughs. A place usually associated with raw resources, agriculture, and development struggles is now surprising everyone with an invention that could very well destroy the entire electric vehicle industry. A self-powered car. Take a second to really sit with those words. A car that doesn't need charging stations, doesn't need to be plugged into your home overnight, doesn't rely on a massive network of lithium batteries mined under questionable conditions. Imagine the freedom in that. Imagine driving across long stretches of road without ever worrying about the battery dying or searching desperately for a charging point. That's the kind of disruption we're talking about here. The emotional impact of this cannot be understated. Because while tech giants in America, Europe, and China are busy fighting for dominance in the electric car space, a small team in Africa has quietly stepped forward with something far more radical. And it's not just about the technology itself, it's about what it represents. For so long, Africa has been seen as the customer, the buyer, the consumer of inventions made elsewhere. Now, suddenly, the roles are shifting. Africa isn't just following anymore. Africa is building. Africa is leading, and there's a deep pride in that. This invention is more than just a car. It's a symbol. It's a reminder that genius can come from anywhere. That bright minds don't need billion-dollar labs in Silicon Valley to create something world-changing. All they need is vision, determination, and the courage to try something different. When you picture a young engineer in Africa piecing together parts, testing prototypes, failing, then trying again with nothing but a dream, doesn't that stir something inside you? It makes you root for them. It makes you want to see them succeed. And here's the wild part. If this technology scales, it could make the entire EV industry obsolete. Think about it. The biggest challenge electric vehicles face isn't speed, or comfort, or even performance. It's infrastructure. Charging stations are still too few and far between. Batteries take too long to recharge compared to filling up a tank of gas. The supply chain for lithium and cobalt is already shaky and controversial. Consumers want EVs, yes, but they also want convenience. And this African car answers that need in the most elegant way possible, by powering itself. That's revolutionary, of course. Tesla has brand power. Of course, companies like BYD in China and Volkswagen in Europe will keep pushing forward with their massive EV lineups. But here's the thing about disruption. It rarely comes from the giants. History shows us over and over again that the real change, the kind that blindsides an entire industry, usually comes from the places nobody is watching. The internet didn't come from the biggest communication companies. Netflix didn't come from Hollywood. And maybe, just maybe, the future of cars won't come from California, but from Africa. It's thrilling to think about the possibilities. Imagine countries where electricity grids are unstable or unreliable on it. An EV in those areas doesn't even make sense right now. But a self-powered car? That would be perfect. Imagine the affordability. Imagine the accessibility. This isn't just about convenience for the wealthy. This could change lives for millions of ordinary people who need reliable transport but don't want to be tied down by high fuel costs or scarce charging stations. And that's what makes this story so powerful. It's not just about cars. It's about independence. It's about freedom. It's about people who for the longest time have been told they're behind, suddenly stepping up and saying, no, we're ahead. We're leading. That gives me goosebumps. There's also something poetic about the timing. The world is in the middle of a heated debate about the environment, climate change, and sustainable energy. Everyone's scrambling for the next big thing that will save us from pollution and carbon emissions. Meanwhile, Africa has quietly unveiled a solution that could leapfrog past all the incremental progress EV companies have been making. It's almost like the underdog finally gets their moment in the spotlight, and they're not just showing up, they're stealing the whole show. Now, let's be real for a moment. This car is still in its early stages. It's not yet mass-produced. It hasn't replaced Teslas on the streets or put charging stations out of business. But isn't that how every revolution begins? First, people laugh. They dismiss it as impossible. Then, slowly, they start to pay attention. Then, all at once, everything changes. I can't help but picture Elon Musk right now, scrolling through headlines, maybe smirking, maybe even shrugging it off. But deep down, he knows the threat. Because if an African invention like this breaks through, Tesla's carefully built empire won't be untouchable anymore. The narrative shifts, the focus shifts, and the balance of power in the EV world could tilt overnight. And for regular people like you and me, that's exciting, because competition is always good. It drives innovation. It forces everyone to do better, to think bigger, to stop settling for good enough. If Tesla, Toyota, Ford, all the others suddenly find themselves competing with a self-powered car from Africa, guess what? We all win. Prices drop. Technology improves. Accessibility skyrockets. What I find most moving, though, is imagining the pride this will bring to everyday Africans. To see their continent not as a place that buys inventions from elsewhere, but as the birthplace of a world-changing technology. Young kids seeing this on TV or on their phones and thinking, wow, if they can do it, so can I. That kind of inspiration is priceless. It plants seeds. Seeds that could grow into even more breakthroughs, more industries, more reasons for the world to finally give Africa the recognition it deserves. So here we are, watching history unfold. A self-powered car that doesn't just challenge the EV industry, challenges the way we see Africa, the way we think about innovation, and the way we imagine the future of transportation. And the best part? This is only the beginning. Think about the last time you had to charge something. Maybe it was your phone, your laptop, or even your electric scooter if you have one. You plug it in, wait, and sometimes get impatient because it takes too long. Now picture that same feeling, but with your car. You're out on a trip, your battery is running low, and the only thing on your mind is where the next charging station is. You're stressed, maybe a little anxious, and your freedom feels limited. That's the reality of owning an electric vehicle right now. Now imagine a car that doesn't need to be plugged in at all. No charging stations. No waiting hours overnight to get back on the road. Just drive. Whenever you want, wherever you want. That's the promise of Africa's self-powered car. And if you let that sink in for a second, you'll realize how massive this shift could be, not just for the EV industry, but for people like you and me who just want convenience and peace of mind. The biggest problem electric vehicles face is not really their performance. They're fast, they're smooth, and they've got amazing technology built inside. But people hesitate to fully commit to them because of one thing: charging. Unlike filling up your tank with gas in just a few minutes, EVs can sometimes take hours to recharge. Even the fast chargers, while quicker, still take time. And the truth is, not every city or highway is filled with those fancy superchargers. Many countries are years away from building the infrastructure needed to support millions of EVs. So the dream feels a little incomplete. That's why this African invention is such a jaw-dropping breakthrough. It doesn't just make electric cars slightly better, it removes their biggest pain point altogether. No more worrying about finding a charger on a road trip. No more running an extension cord from your house to your driveway every night. No more range anxiety where you keep staring at the dashboard, praying your battery lasts until the next station. Imagine the relief in knowing your car powers itself. That's freedom on wheels, and it's not just about convenience, it's about accessibility. Think about regions in the world where electricity is unreliable. There are towns and villages where power cuts are part of daily life. For them, owning an electric car is almost impossible because, well, where would they charge it? But a self-powered car changes everything. Suddenly, people who were excluded from the EV revolution are included. It opens doors, it levels the playing field. And it makes this technology, it feels almost magical, the thought of a car that doesn't need to stop to recharge. It's like we've skipped a step in the evolution of cars. While the rest of the world is trying to make charging stations faster, bigger, and more common, This African innovation just sidesteps the whole thing. Why wait for charging stations when you don't need them at all? It's like watching someone solve a puzzle in a completely different way than you expected. And you can't help but admire the creativity. And here's something else to think about. The charging infrastructure that the world is trying to build is incredibly expensive. Governments are spending billions. Companies are investing heavily. Consumers are paying higher prices just to support this system. But what if we didn't need it? What if we could skip all that investment and go straight to self-powered vehicles? That would save money, time, and resources on a global scale. And that's why the EV industry is worried. Because the very foundation of their plans, the need for charging, suddenly doesn't matter anymore. For regular people, though it's pure joy, imagine buying a car and never again worrying about electricity bills going up because of your charging habits. Never worrying about whether your city even has enough charging points. Never sitting around in a parking lot for an hour while your car charges. Instead, you just live your life. You drive, you work, you play, you travel. The car takes care of itself. That kind of simplicity makes life lighter. It gives you back your time, your peace, your energy. I think that's why people are so excited about this breakthrough. It's not just about being innovative or futuristic, kids, about being human. It understands what we really want. Not just a cleaner environment, but also ease. Not just sustainability, but also comfort. A technology that doesn't complicate our lives, but simplifies them. And that's rare in today's world, where so many innovations end up adding more hassle than help. When you sit inside a self-powered car and realize that you'll never again have to search for a charger, it's more than a relief, it's empowerment. You feel in control again. You feel like the car is finally serving you, instead of you constantly serving the car with charging schedules and plugins. That subtle shift could change how people view vehicles entirely, and maybe the most emotional part of all is thinking about where this came from. Africa, a continent often dismissed when it comes to technological leaps, is now the birthplace of something so bold it could redefine an entire industry. That makes the story even sweeter. Because it's not just about removing charging, it's about removing doubt. Doubt that Africa could lead. Doubt that innovation only belongs to the West. Doubt that the underdog can't win. This car says otherwise. Sometimes change doesn't come gently. Sometimes it bursts in, unannounced, shaking the ground and leaving entire industries scrambling to catch up. That's exactly what's happening right now with Africa's self-powered car. At first glance, it looks like just another vehicle, just another invention trying to grab attention. But if you lean in closer and really understand what it means, you'll realize this could be the storm that disrupts the global EV industry in a way no one saw coming. The electric vehicle world is built on a simple narrative. The future is electric, batteries will rule, and big players like Tesla, BYD, Volkswagen, and Toyota will lead the way. Billions of dollars have been poured into research, factories, and infrastructure. Charging stations are spreading slowly but surely. Governments are giving subsidies to push EV adoption. And for years, this looked unstoppable. The story was neat, predictable, almost boring in its certainty. But then, out of nowhere, comes an invention that doesn't play by these rules. A self-powered car. A car that doesn't care about charging stations or battery ranges. A car that says, you've been building an entire empire on charging. Well, guess what? We don't need it. That's not just innovation, that's disruption. And disruption hurts. Imagine the executives in giant EV corporations sitting in their sleek offices, suddenly realizing that the very problem they've been trying to solve, charging, isn't even relevant anymore. Years of planning, billions of dollars, thousands of workers focused on a system that this one invention might make obsolete. That's not just competition. That's a complete rewrite of the game. It reminds me of when smartphones killed the camera industry almost overnight. People had been buying point-and-shoot cameras for years. Companies like Kodak and Nikon thought they were safe. But then phones started coming with cameras that were good enough, and suddenly nobody wanted to carry two devices. It wasn't that cameras got worse, it's that smartphones made them unnecessary for the average person. That's exactly what could happen to the EV industry. It's not that Tesla or BYD cars will suddenly become bad. It's that a self-powered car will make them feel unnecessary. Now imagine the ripple effect. Governments that are investing billions into EV infrastructure might start to question it. Charging companies might panic, realizing their future profits could vanish. Battery suppliers who already face controversies over mining lithium and cobalt could see demand drop drastically. And the big car manufacturers? They'd have to rethink everything from design to marketing to production. It's a domino effect. And once it starts, it's hard to stop. For regular people like us, though, this disruption could be thrilling. Because disruption almost always benefits the consumer. Think about it when Netflix disrupted cable TV, we got cheaper and more flexible entertainment. When smartphones disrupted traditional phones, we got a whole world in our pockets. When low-cost airlines disrupted the travel industry, we got affordable flights. And now, if a self-powered car disrupts EVs, we might get cheaper, simpler, and more reliable cars. It also adds something that's been missing from the EV world: excitement. Let's be honest, most electric cars today feel kind of the same. Sleek designs, digital dashboards, quiet engines. They're impressive, sure, but the innovation feels incremental, like small steps instead of giant leaps. This African invention feels like a giant leap. It brings back that sense of wonder, that feeling of wow. I didn't think this was possible. That emotional spark is what captures people's attention and makes them believe in a new future. And here's the part I love most. This disruption isn't coming from the usual suspects. It's not Silicon Valley. It's not Germany or Japan. It's Africa. That alone is powerful. For too long, Africa has been painted as a follower, a consumer of the world's technology, not the creator of it. But this invention flips that narrative. Suddenly, Africa isn't waiting for the future, it's building it. That shift in perception could inspire millions of young people on the continent to believe that their ideas, too, can disrupt the world. The global EV industry has been moving like a giant train, heavy and unstoppable, following tracks laid years ago. Charging networks, battery factories, government policies, all of it pointing in one direction. But this self-powered car is like a rocket. It doesn't need the tracks. It takes off on its own path, and in doing so, forces the whole industry to reconsider where it's heading. That's the real power of disruption. It doesn't just replace what exists. It changes how we think. It challenges assumptions we thought were permanent. For years, we assumed cars of the future would be electric, plugged into walls or fast chargers. We assumed the best innovation was making batteries last longer. But this African car says, what if you never had to charge at all? That one question has the power to overshadow everything else the EV giants are working on. And the irony: if this technology succeeds, the EV industry might look back one day and realize they were so focused on competing with each other that they didn't see the real threat coming. Just like how BlackBerry was so focused on beating Nokia that they never saw Apple coming. Just like how taxi companies were so focused on each other that they never saw Uber rising. History loves repeating itself. For people who have felt left out of the EV, when you hear about Africa, most of the time the stories are about resources, poverty, challenges, or sometimes conflict. Rarely do you hear about Africa leading the way in high-tech innovation. That's why this self-powered car is so much more than just a machine with wheels. It's a symbol, a living, breathing reminder that the world has been underestimating Africa for far too long. It represents independence, pride, the possibility of global leadership coming from a place many never expected. Think about what that means emotionally for the people who built it. Imagine being a young African engineer, always told that real breakthroughs come from Europe, America, or Asia. Imagine constantly hearing that Africa's role is to supply raw materials while others build the final product. Then suddenly you're standing next to a self-powered car, a car that doesn't need charging. A car that the entire EV industry is worried about, and you realize, this time Africa is not just participating, it's leading. That feeling must be indescribable. It's not just a technical achievement, it's a statement. A statement that Africa is tired of waiting to be invited to the table, tired of being underestimated, tired of being seen as a follower. With this invention, Africa isn't asking for recognition, it's demanding it. showing the world that brilliance, resilience, and creativity can bloom anywhere, even in places the world has long ignored. And for everyday Africans, this is a source of pride. It's one thing to buy an imported car from Europe or Japan. It's another thing entirely to drive something built at home, on your soil, by your own people, that the whole world suddenly wants to talk about. It sparks something inside, a sense of ownership, of belonging, of dignity. You're not just a consumer anymore. You're part of a continent that is shaping the future. That's powerful. It also redefines what independence means. For decades, Africa's economies have been tied down by dependence on imports, whether it's oil, it's manufactured goods, or technology. A self-powered car flips that equation. Imagine African countries no longer relying on foreign companies for fuel or for EV infrastructure. Imagine the money saved, the industries created, the jobs generated. That's not just independence on a symbolic level. It's real economic independence. It's freedom from systems that have kept Africa at the mercy of global powers for too long and beyond economics. There's something spiritual about it too, because cars are more than just transportation. They're symbols of progress, of movement, of possibilities. For Africa to produce a car that doesn't just match global standards, but actually challenges them, it sends a message to the entire world. Africa is not behind. Africa is not waiting to catch up. Africa is leading. And leadership is exactly what this invention embodies. It takes courage to lead. It takes courage to step out of the shadow of giants like Tesla and say, we have something better. It takes courage to challenge the systems that have been built over decades and funded with billions. But that's exactly what this car does. It doesn't whisper, it roars. And that roar is being heard not only in Africa, but everywhere. For young Africans especially, this is a turning point. When kids see this story, when they watch the news or scroll through videos of this self-powered car, it sparks belief. It tells them that innovation isn't only for Silicon Valley, that they don't need to leave their continent to make history, that the next big breakthrough could come from their own minds, their own hands, their own communities. That kind of inspiration is priceless. It can light fires in classrooms, workshops, and garages across the continent. And it changes the global narrative too. For far too long, Africa has been seen as the place that lags behind, the place that needs help, that consumes but doesn't create. This invention shatters that stereotype. Suddenly, the world has to look at Africa not as a receiver of innovation, but as a driver of it. That shift forces respect. It forces attention. It forces the acknowledgement that leadership can come from anywhere. I think that's what makes this invention so emotional. Because it's not just about transportation, it's about identity. It's about reclaiming a sense of pride that has often been stolen or overlooked. It's about standing tall and saying, we are more than our struggles. We are more than our past. We are innovators. We are leaders. We are capable of changing the world. And the truth is, the timing couldn't be better. The world is desperately searching for solutions to climate change, for new ways to move forward, for alternatives that make life easier and more sustainable. While the big players are stuck fine-tuning batteries and building charging stations, Africa leaps forward with a self-powered car. That doesn't just make Africa part of the conversation. It makes Africa the one leading it. Picture the ripple effects. Imagine global leaders discussing energy and transportation and realizing they can no longer ignore Africa. Imagine companies looking to collaborate, not just to extract resources, but to learn, to partner, to follow Africa's lead. Imagine Africans everywhere walking with a little more pride, knowing that something from their soil has shaken the world. That's what makes this car so much bigger than metal, wheels, or technology. It's a symbol of possibility, a symbol of what happens when people believe in themselves, even when the world doubts them. A symbol of a future where Africa isn't on the sidelines, but right at the center, guiding the way forward. If you're excited by seeing breakthroughs like this and you want to stay ahead of the curve before the rest of the world catches on, make sure you hit that subscribe button. It's free, and it means you'll never miss out on stories that could change the way you see the future. Drop a like if you believe. Africa's innovation deserves global recognition.